Okay, now let's go to the tabs. Now starting with the Config tab, this is where we set the plot area proportions. Now right now they're set at 77 and 80, meaning that the plot area extends 77% in the X direction going from left to right, and 80% in the Y direction going from top to bottom. So that's really what that's all about. Then we have these other controls here that says New Plot Clear Objects, Clear Plot Objects Only, and Build Macro. Clicking on the New Plot Clear Objects, we come up with a question that says Start New Plot and Clear All Plot Objects and Controls. We would answer no to this only because if we answer yes to this, all of the objects on this particular interface, any interface that you happen to be working on, will be cleared. Now, if that's what you want, this is a great way to begin a brand new plot with nothing on the screen, including the plot area or any controls. So be careful when you look at this particular question, and be careful to decide what answer you want to give it. We're going to give it a no because we want to keep everything here. We just wanted to show you that the question exists. The same goes true for Clear Plot Objects Only. The Build Macro control brings up the macro builder. This is kind of a shortcut way of getting to the macro builder to update and save our plots and be able to save the plots to a file name that we've chosen for it. We normally went in previous videos to the wrench icon in the toolbar menu, but this is a kind of a shortcut way of doing it. So that's in effect the Config drop-down tab. Let's go to the Media Color tab. This is where we can select colors or JPEG images for backgrounds and for text boxes and so forth. So let's take a look at what can be done. Here we see that we have selected the backs or the background colors, or JPEG images rather, for our background. The gold JPEG image is selected. This is what we have right now on our background image. And we can come in here and select our OBAC. And we notice that the backs/gold.jpg is selected. We can change that if we so choose. We can come in here and choose, let's say, gray, and then we can drag that here. And now our background color turns into kind of a leathery gray. Let's keep it at a gold. Just wanted to show you that. Let's keep it at a gold. Let's click on gold again, drag it to our back color or image area, release it, and now we're back to gold. We can also choose a particular color if we want to use that for a background. And let's choose, let's say, this light blue color. We can click on the light blue, bring it over here to our back color or image, and now our background color is a nice light blue. We can also create custom colors just by right-clicking on an empty area here, bringing up our color choices, click on Define Custom Colors, pick a custom color that we like. Let's say this kind of a reddish color here. Click OK, and now that color turns out to be in the box that we check. And before we leave, let's re-choose our gold background image. Bring it over here. Okay, now we're back to gold. Now to the Controls 1 and Controls 2 tab. The Controls 1 tab in the Object Editor displays the available intrinsic controls of MakerPlot. Now these controls are designed as an integral part of MakerPlot. And an advantage of these controls is that they are created on the interface much more quickly, as it takes less time for MakerPlot to place one on the interface. But due to the coding and operations required in MakerPlot, they are not as fully featured as those in the Controls 2 category. So let's look at the Controls 2 tab. And the Controls 2 tab displays the available extrinsic controls. Now these are ActiveX controls developed specifically to work with MakerPlot. And during interface creation, they take a bit longer to process, but they're generally more full-featured and process data independently from MakerPlot. That is, while MakerPlot is processing data, these controls can be doing their own tasks and make process calls to MakerPlot as needed. Okay, let's go back to Controls 1. And I want to describe to you the various controls that we have right under the Controls 1 tab, and then proceed going down to the image holders, and then going down further to the image buttons, LEDs, and on-off controls. Beginning with the O label control, the O label is used to display text information that the user cannot interact with. That's right, you can't interact with it. For example, the labels on the menu items below, like control, y-axis, x-axis, logging, interface, these are all examples of a label control. Now, label controls are used to identify sections or groups of buttons, switches, LEDs, and so forth. So they're not meant to be clicked or manipulated by the user. They can have borders and different background colors like the ones we did for the binary value here on the right, but they're just labels. Now, on the other hand, the O-text controls, meaning object text controls, are used to display information that can be changed by the user. An example of a text box that does this is the min and max y-axis boxes, where you can type in a new value for the y-axis minimum and maximum values. And with the event code that's in the text box, the y-axis will be updated when you push the enter key. We made this example here by entering 400. We can go and enter 500. And now the y-axis is set from 0 to 500. And that's because of the O-text event code. Now, another example of the O-text control is the text box that displays the decimal value of the LEDs on the right. Its event code only allows it to display the decimal value of the binary number, and you can't interact with this one, but that's just the nature of it. So these are the O-text controls that we can choose from the Controls 1 tab. All right, going on, we don't have an example of the next control called the OS text box, but this is used for multi-line text that may have new text added at any time for user information. So you might want to look into its possibilities, and all of this is covered in the documentation section on our website. Going on, the O button control is a standard Windows button that is designed to be clicked. This is the kind of button that you can use for lots of interface interactions, but other similar buttons, which we'll discuss shortly, have the same or more features. Now, the O check control is just what it appears to be. It's a checkbox. If you design an interface that needs a checkbox to activate a particular feature, then here it is. We should say at this point that any of these controls and controls to follow can be placed on an object background just by clicking on them and dragging them to wherever you want them to be. And we've shown you this in other videos, and we'll show you soon again. The other controls in this group are the O drop and the O list controls, which can display a drop-down menu or list respectively. Examples of the O drop control are the COM port and baud rate selections here in the menu area. We don't have an example of the O list box in this interface, but if you need one for your interface, it's right here. And rounding out the controls in this section is the O banner control. Again, we don't have an example of this either, but it is a scrolling text box where you can input a message that will be scrolled kind of like a movie marquee. So if you want to attract attention, like a user's attention to something, please use this box. It's a very, very unique, interesting control box, the O banner control. Then there's the O plot control. And this will allow you to place more than one plot area on the interface, much like the dual plot interface that comes standard with MakerPlot. Now, if you haven't seen or worked with it yet, I invite you to examine it. As a matter of fact, we have a video on it, so check that out as well. You can put more than one plot on the interface background. So if you want to, for example, display voltage, current, and power as separate plots, you can do this by putting multiple plots on the display using the O-plot control. Rounding out this section of controls 1, we have two sets of other controls. The first control is a slider control, and then just next to it is our progress bar control. And we have both horizontal and vertical versions of each one of them. Let's take a look at our slider control to begin with. That's this one. So we'll just click on it with our left mouse key, drag it over here to our blank area in our My interface, and now we see a slider control that we have seen before in another interface that comes standard with MakerPlot called the interactive interface. And if you haven't seen that yet, please take a look at it. There's also a video in our Learn series with respect to an Arduino set point example that uses a slider control. It only has three properties, and that is a min, which is 0 right now, a max, which is set to 100, and a value, which is set to 65, which is what the slider control is just about now. And we can change the min and max values either directly when we create the slider control using the object editor or with event code. Let's change it now to, let's say, 80. Click the enter key and our slider goes to 80. So that's our slider control. We have two versions of it again. We have a horizontal version, which is what you're looking at now, and a vertical version. Now let's get to one button that we haven't really used thus far, and that's our delete button. Let's click on the delete button to get rid of this slider control so we can make room for our progress bar. Just come down to delete, click on it. It asks the question, delete listed object, and our listed object happens to be SLD_84-OHSLIDER, which stands for the particular name of the control and the generic name of the control, which is object horizontal slider. So yes, this was the last control that we entered, so we can click yes and we'll delete it. Let's now go to the horizontal progress bar, left click on it, move it down to our open area, release it, and we see that the properties are even less. We just have a maximum value, which is 100, or we can change this to something, let's say, like 1,000. Okay, so if we wanted to have a horizontal control that indicated something from 0 to 1,000 in terms of a progress bar, then we have it at 1,000. Then we can enter a value from 0 to 1,000, and the progress bar will show up proportionally. Let's enter 250, which is 1/4, and there it is, 1/4 of the way towards the end. Let's enter 500. There it is at half, 750, 3/4, and 1,000 itself. And now we're there at 1,000. One of the applications that comes to mind for progress bar, of course, is to show the progress of a process that you're doing, let's say in a process control experiment. Another example would be to use a vertical progress bar and overlay that on an image of a thermometer. You can use the progress bar as a temperature indicator for that particular thermometer. So that rounds out these particular controls. Next come the image holder controls. Now these consist of the transparent image holder, the square shown here, that can create an invisible hotspot on the interface. For example, if you want to place a graphic image on the background for users to click on, you can first place the graphic image where you want it to be, and then overlay it with the transparent image control. And then you can add event code to have it react to a mouse click or whatever. The other image holders are these vertical and horizontal LED bar graphs. These can display a series of 10 LED bars that go from no bars to all bars lit, and your event code only has to change the number of the bar to display it. Let's do an example of this. Let's delete the progress bar. Click yes. Let's grab one of the image holders, which is a red horizontal bar graph. We notice now that the bar graph doesn't have any LEDs lit, and that's because if we look at the name of the bar graph, it's really bar underscore HOR underscore red underscore 0.gif. So it's this number 0 that we can change to create a different looking bar graph. And come in and change a 0 to a 1. Let's do that. Click the enter key, and there we have one of our bar graphs lit. You can come in and change it to, let's say, a 4. Hit the enter key, and now we have 4 LEDs in the bar graph lit. So you can create event code, and we give you examples of how to create event code to do this. And as a matter of fact, in one of our interfaces, we also have these LED bar graphs, and we show you the event code that you can use to create moving bar graphs that are, let's say, keyed to either a digital signal or keyed to an analog signal. And you're not just limited to the red and green colors. If you come over to our website and click on the meters, switches, etc. menu selection, then you see all the various meters and LED bars and LEDs and push button switches that are available to you. We're going to click on the LED bars, and these are the selections that are available to you. They come in blue, green, red, and yellow, both vertical and horizontal. You have the choices of all of these LED bar graphs to choose from. So you're just not limited to green and red. We have blue and yellow as well. Then there are the 7-segment LED number image holder. It works much the same as the LED bar graphs in that all you need to do is create a event code to change the value of the digit. Let's take a look at that too. Let's come up here and grab this, drag it down to our object area, release it, and we see it's at a 0 right now, and we can change that again to, let's say, a 1. Click on it, and now we have a 1 displayed. Click on it again, and we can, let's say, choose a 4, and a 4 is displayed. So your event code can certainly handle this, and you have the choice of an LED graph or 7-segment display for image holders to display your data. Before we go on, let us delete the last couple of images that we have there. So we'll hit delete a couple of times, and that gets rid of our 7-segment display and our horizontal LED bar graph. And coming down here to the image buttons, let's choose one of those. Let's pick one of these slider controls here, bring it down, and we notice it's basically the same as the slider controls we have on our interface just above it. It's a red color, but nevertheless it is a slider control. We can click on it and it will toggle between an on and an off state, and we can certainly resize this. But the key to all of these image buttons, the LEDs and the on-off controls here in the Controls 1 section, is that it has basically 2 images. An image 0 for the off state and an image 1 for the on state. You can change this particular control, for example, from red for on, and then for image 0 you can come in and change the slider to a green horizontal for an off state. So you have that choice as well. So that about rounds it out for the Control 1's offering. Let's go to the Controls 2. As we mentioned before, the Controls 2 are extrinsic, and they are ActiveX controls that are not part of MakerPlot per se, but work with MakerPlot to give you a more robust object, if you will. For example, we have 4 meter types: a square, round, vertical, and horizontal. And you can see them all on our website, again, under meters, switches, and more. Let's take a look at that. And come over here and click this. Here's our various meters, square meters, round, vertical, and horizontal. Let's say clicking on square, we can see all the various colors that you can choose for a square meter. These colors are duplicated for all meter types. So we just wanted to give you an indication of the variety of choices that you have for the various meters that we allow you to use on our MakerPlot interfaces. There's also a dual joystick control that's featured in our interactive interface, and it's here too in our Controls 2 selection, but you need to have a suitable joystick connected to it to make it work. And since we don't have one of these at the moment, I just wanted to let you know that it exists and is there for your experimentation. Then come the image buttons. These are momentary, but you can adjust the properties to make them on, off, or static. For example, if you come down here and click on one of the rocker switches, let's click on it and drag it over to the image area, and up will pop the image editor for that particular rocker switch. And here is our image label for the off condition, image label for the on condition. We can come down here and choose the type. Right now it's set to momentary, but clicking on the drop-down menu, you can select on or off, or you can select static. So we've just chosen to put the image buttons as being momentary here, but once again, you can choose on or off or static. Same is true for the ones below it. These are the image buttons, LEDs, and on-off controls that we've used in this particular interface and other interfaces. So those are set to an on-off state, but again, if you want, they can be changed to a momentary state just by changing the properties. This takes care of our object editor, so we refer you to the MakerPlot website documentation for a complete review and understanding of everything that we've discussed in this video, and all of the documentation will be able to give you a thorough, complete understanding of each one of these controls, how they operate, their functions and features, and so forth.